This was at the 2009 Prostate Cancer Research Institute conference that took place in September last year. And it is mostly consists of oncologists, the leading oncologists, especially people who specialize in prostate cancer in the States. And they always start off with a general presentation on lifestyle, dietary issues relating to prostate cancer. And David Heber was this year's presenter. He is director of the UCLA Center for Human Nutrition at the University of California, Los Angeles. And he is chief of clinical nutrition in the Department of Medicine and founding director of UCLA Center for Human Nutrition at UCLA. He is very highly thought of and is the author of 25 books and 3 professional texts dealing with dietary fat, lipids, hormones, tumorigenesis, nutritional oncology, pomegranates, ancient roots to modern medicine, and the list goes on. So a very well qualified individual who has knitted together lifestyle and prostate cancer better than I've ever seen anybody do so. So let me add my congratulations to you to come out on this wet night. I think you're in for a treat.
Well, thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here today. And I have great respect for all of you who are here today, the physicians, the nurses, the patients who are out there. And I hope that when I speak to this audience that you'll take the message forward, because I often say that the people I talk to are my agents of change, people that can talk to other people and spread the word and get these ideas out there, because they really are all about trying to get our biology in line with what we're putting in our bodies in terms of diet. And I think the research that we've done has specifically looked at that area, and I'm going to try to bring it down to a simple level today, but to some very interesting areas that I think will help you understand where mankind has come and why so many of us have heart disease, prostate cancer, diabetes. When I was an intern in 1973 in Boston, I would sit around and say, I'd say to my attending, why do all my patients have congestive heart failure, diabetes, and all these diseases? And he'd say, well, I did this years ago, but this has actually got more people in it. And what this shows is body mass index versus body fat. And especially in women, you can see you could have a very low body mass index and a very high body fat. I teach an undergraduate class in nutrition at UCLA. We have a lot of Asian students. And the Asian young women in particular are very thin but have very little muscle because they've been dieting to try to be thinner. And my daughter helped me get the name for this. It's called skinny fat. So you can look skinny and be fat. It's a good way to communicate it. Sarcopenic obesity doesn't quite have the same ring to it. And for men, this applies too. So what I do is I look at the muscle mass, because some men have lower muscle mass, some have more. That determines how much protein you need in your diet, how many calories you burn, and what your ideal weight is. I've had a lot of men come to me and they said, well, I couldn't get down to this weight that they wanted me to be. So unrealistic, I must be doing something wrong. But they were already at their target weight. So I think it's important to measure body fat. And it's important to just get rid of this fat storage organ. Now, we're doing a research project that I'm going to tell you more about, because for those of you who live in Los Angeles, I'm looking for 20 to 30 good participants to help us with a single blood sample. I'll pitch that at the end of the talk. But it has to do with this fat storage organ. So it's a fat storage organ where you put fat quickly. Now, I can gain 10 pounds if I'm sitting at my desk for a couple of weeks, don't exercise, eat normally. You'll notice your waist getting bigger, you'll gain weight up here in the neck, and that's the first place you lose it. So it's a fat storage organ. Why is it in the stomach? And I have to walk away from the microphone for a moment here. The reason they didn't put it in the legs is so you could lean forward and still go after that squirrel in the forest. Okay? Otherwise, if you put it in your legs, it would have slowed you down. So that's why nature did that. And if you do nothing and just keep watching TV and working the remote like I was, your abdominal fat will increase with age as your muscle decreases, because you're not playing football, you're not doing all these things anymore. Abdominal fat is not only a fat storage organ, it's pro-inflammatory, and prostate cancer is associated with inflammation. To achieve optimal abdominal fat, you have to use an anti-inflammatory diet, muscle building, and aerobic exercise. And weights only cost 49 cents a pound, which is a lot cheaper than Kobe beef. So I recommend you all get a set of little weights and start doing those dumbbells at home, regardless of your age. Jack LaLanne was a famous TV guy that I was up at a seminar on food addiction up in Washington State, and he was there at the dinner, 95 years old and still kicking. At age 65, he towed a boat to Catalina Island out here. So I used to watch him when I was about 11. He had these cute little leotards and dance shoes on, but a very good guy who was one of the early exercise proponents in America. So some men, usually see this guy, he's got his sleeves rolled up and a tattoo, and it says Joe on it, and he's got a cigarette pack in there, and he thinks this is a muscle. He's usually running a crew of 4 or 5 other guys, because it's usually a very aggressive guy. He's got a lot of muscle. He's a tough guy, there is something to that. I think that, there is a genetic thing. Why are all these CEOs and captains of industry getting prostate cancer? There's something to this that has to do with the stress, with male hormones, and how this all interacts. My friend Hasi Cohen works on IGF-1, insulin-like growth factor 1. We've done some studies years ago where men go on a diet, and we take their blood samples out, put them in with prostate cancer cells, and the men after the diet, their ability of their blood to stimulate prostate cancer cell growth goes down, and the difference was the IGF-1 level. So IGF-1 and insulin are very closely related. We're learning a lot about this. Men with obesity, now there are studies from Steve Friedland at Duke showing that men with obesity have a more rapid progression of their prostate cancer. We think this insulin resistance and insulin-like growth factor 1 may do that. We think it works through activating circulating white blood cells called macrophages. These are little Pac-Men that eat up anything that tries to infect you. And we're looking at the ones that are PSA positive, which have visited the prostate. And I'm going to tell you about that. But inflammation, I also have to tell you, promotes heart disease, diabetes, Alzheimer's disease, and common forms of cancer. So even if I'm full of it with regard to prostate cancer, I can tell you this is going to help your heart, it's going to help your pancreas, you're going to feel better, you'll be able to move around faster, there's nothing wrong with it. Now the first one to link fat to inflammation was my friend Phil Kern, who was at Cedars-Sinai at the time. He's now in the state of Arkansas and put the governor of Arkansas on a diet. He's the one who got him to lose all that weight. And he showed that tumor necrosis factor was coming out of fat cells in 1982. And that was the first time that an infectious substance or something related to inflammation, infection, or tumor killing was coming out of a fat cell. And today we know that what happens is when that fat grows quickly, it grows like a tumor, and tumors have to grow their own blood vessels, something called angiogenesis, and the fat has to do the same thing. The late Judah Folkman put some animals, they're obese animals, genetically obese animals, on his angiogenesis inhibitors, and they couldn't get fat on a high-fat diet because they couldn't grow fat tissue. Well, this angiogenesis vessels are really not good at supplying oxygen to their tissues that they supply. So the tissues start to die, and that brings in these macrophages, these Pac-Men from the bone marrow, to eat up the fat cells. And this is just shown in this cartoon here, that they eat up the dead adipocytes. They form a little circle here, and they eat up the dead fat here from this dead cell. In doing so, there's an interaction between the fat cells and the white cells causing insulin resistance. And I'm not going to bring you through all of this, but it's very much like a tumor. There are what are called chemokines that attract the white cells in, and cytokines that promote inflammation and tumor growth. What's going on in your abdominal fat is a mirror of what's going on in your prostate. And insulin resistance, and I don't expect you to go through all this, but I want you to know that there are molecular steps that we now understand, and that we've shown that pomegranate and weight loss and diet and lycopene and all these things affect these signaling systems that signal inflammation. And one of the key players there is this substance called NF-kappa B, which is a pretty complicated name. David Baltimore won the Nobel Prize. It's called nuclear factor kappa B, and he explained to me he was working on white blood cells called B cells at the time. And this was the first protein that went from the cytoplasm of the cell into the nucleus to program genetic changes in the cell. And so it's called nuclear factor kappa B because it grew kappa chains in the B cell. That's how it got its complicated name. We have now shown that number of things will inhibit that inflammation, and I'll talk about that in just a moment. So inflammation now is not just for prostate cancer, but it's liver disease, kidney disease, heart disease. Normal immune function is a balance. You want to have an active immune system to fight infection, but our problem today is we have excess inflammation. We've overdone it. And with our poor diet and high fat, we have in obese people activated macrophages that are constantly infiltrating our tissues and going after infections that don't exist and stimulating our heart blood vessels to oxidize cholesterol and develop atherosclerotic plaques. So what about the prostate? Are there macrophages in the prostate? And this is some recent studies. First of all, there was a study done in 2008 published in Prostate showing that there were more of these infiltrating monocytes in tumors in animals that were implanted, human tumors, in the cells. And then in humans, they actually can take blood samples out and find PSA-containing macrophages at a higher percentage in men with prostate cancer than men without prostate cancer, and a higher percentage in men with advanced prostate cancer that has spread. So we got very interested in this. This was published in 2008, and I got a creativity award from the Prostate Cancer Foundation to study this. And our model is that the white cells come into the prostate, they stimulate inflammation, and ultimately what you find when you study the prostate cells is they develop their own autoinflammation. They become like the white cell that was invading. And we have different kinds of prostate cancer cell lines. They have different names. We've developed a number of them here in Los Angeles, like LAPC4 and LAPC8. There's one called DU145. It's an advanced prostate cancer cell line. And it has in it, it makes its own NF-kappa B. It doesn't need any white cells. You can just put it in cell culture, and you can measure NF-kappa B going to town, and then you can put things in to try to inhibit it. So we think that as prostate cancer advances, it ultimately produces its own. Same thing happens for testosterone, by the way. Turns out for testosterone, early on, if you lower testosterone levels, you get the cells to die. Then another subpopulation grows up that can grow in the absence of testosterone. And the blood levels of testosterone are very low, but if you go inside the cell, the levels of testosterone are about 50% of normal because the cell's making its own testosterone. And that's where some of the new agents like abiraterone are having their effect in very advanced prostate cancer. So these guys become autonomous. But we're talking much earlier, what can you do for prevention? Number one, you need to balance the essential fats in foods. I don't want to bring you through all the chemistry, but these are saturated fats, are the ones with the straight lines. The ones with little double lines, those are called double bonds. They're actually clouds of electrons. They're what are called polyunsaturated fats. And there are two different classes I want you to think about. There are actually three. One class is omega-6, and that's corn oil, soybean oil, cottonseed oil. Just read any package of potato chips, and you'll be able to read all the common forms. They're all in there. The other one is olive oil, which is the only oil in the Bible, and it's a very healthy oil. It's got one omega-9 double bond. It is neutral in terms of heart disease. And then you have the fish oils. And eating fish is something mankind did from a very early time. 250,000 years ago, pre-human hominids were found near Cape Town, South Africa, to be having a clam bake on the beach. And they've dated it back 250. These were hominids, not humans. And then human migration was up the east coast of Africa all the way up to the west coast of India to Kerala, which was some of the earliest civilization. The Sanskrit language developed there, but man kind of hugged the ocean like we do here in Los Angeles, live near the beach. So they go right around that way, and they were eating seafood, and it was part of the human diet. And we believe that omega-3 fatty acids are part of the human diet. You need to get them from fish oil or fish. There are some marine algae that will make it. They don't taste real good, but the Japanese love them. If you go to a Japanese cocktail party, they'll have little snack crackers with fish skins on them and stuff. It's an acquired taste, but there are people in Holland they eat herring on the street like it was hot dogs. So a lot of this is acquired taste, what you had as a child, what your culture tells you, that you got to have a hot dog, you got to have a pizza, you got to have ice cream. These are things we were taught as kids. Well, if you take a ratio of the omega-6 to the omega-3, it actually directly relates to the incidence of heart disease. And the United States, if I took a piece of fat sample from a typical American, 80% of the fat in that sample of fat tissue would be omega-6. If I went and I took a Japanese sample from somebody eating a traditional diet in Japan, and when I go to Japan, I've been there 6 times, I always say, please keep your traditional diet. Ocean fish, vegetables, soy protein. Don't eat the American diet. But our fast food restaurants are just pursuing that. I went to Beijing in 1995. I said, take me to your favorite restaurant. They took me to Kentucky Fried Chicken. So, it tastes, everybody loves the taste of this stuff. So if you look back in Japan, only about 40% of their fats are omega-6, 60% are omega-3. And if you look at Inuits, these are like Native Americans, except they live in Canada. As they move into the urban areas, they become higher in omega-6. So this is a rural-urban problem around the world, whether you're a rural Chinese farmer moving into Beijing or Shanghai, or you're in Thailand moving into Bangkok, it doesn't matter. This is a worldwide epidemic of us putting processed fats into the food supply. So fish oils given to men with prostate cancer show up in the prostate gland. Fish oils reduce prostate cancer growth in animals, as does a low-fat diet. The ability to change the fats in your cells is dependent on lowering total fat while increasing fish oil intake from supplements or ocean-caught fish. So what do you need to do? Eat fish 3 or more times a week and or take 3 grams of fish oil supplements daily. And the fish oil supplements don't have mercury in them. They're perfectly safe. They're made from little menhaden fish that don't live very long off the coast of North Carolina, and they're very pure. Avoid farmed fish. That's tilapia, salmon, trout, and catfish. Eat ocean-caught fish or wild salmon. Don't worry too much about mercury in the tuna. This has been a big scare tactic. Don't worry about it too much, except in scavenger fish. So I stay away from swordfish and Lake Superior whitefish, no offense to our colleagues from the Great Lakes. There is a very complex metabolism again, but I just wanted to show this. I just throw this up to tell you there's a lot understood about how cholesterol, fish oils, and inflammation interact. Oxidized lipids, you're all familiar with leaving a bag of potato chips in the back of a VW and they get rancid from the heat. And the oxidized lipids set off a chain reaction. They're bad for vascular health. They promote tumor growth. There's a chemical called malondialdehyde, which measures lipid oxidation. We made some hamburger patties with and without spices. We were able to lower the malondialdehyde by 70%. And then we fed it to people, and we were able to lower the oxidized products in their urine by 50%. And this tasted like a Mediterranean burger. I'm talking about 4 grams of Italian spices, not just your plain burger with a little ketchup on top. Cholesterol and prostate cancer. A lot of evidence that statins reduce the risk of prostate cancer. Michael Freeman at Children's Hospital in Boston works with us. There's something in the membrane called a cholesterol-rich lipid raft. And if you deplete that raft of cholesterol, there's an androgen receptor there bound to a signaling molecule called AKT, which is a tyrosine kinase, and you can actually stop tumor growth. So here are some animals that he fed a high cholesterol diet, got their cholesterol up to 300. versus low cholesterol diet, and you can see the size of those tumors on the high cholesterol diet's much higher. So you can grow them with a high cholesterol diet, you can shrink them with statins, and that's an area we'd like to research, but can't seem to get our grant funded. Now the next one is colorful fruits and vegetables. And this is something I've been working on for a long time. My book, What Colors Your Diet, is out in 11 languages. It was picked one of the top 10 best health books in China in 2008. And it's fair to all the vegetables. I have a color code. We look at all the different fruits and vegetables. They all have something to offer. They have this one. I have 4 natural product chemists in our laboratory. The first one that was known in prostate cancer was lycopene in tomato juice and vegetable juice. We did a study a long time ago on I could have had a V8, years ago. You can have any kind of tomato juice or tomato soup, pasta sauce, or watermelon, by the way, has the same lycopene in it as tomato. And it definitely works. There's been a lot of negative on this, which I can talk about in the Meet the Professor session at the exhibit hall after this. Broccoli, as I mentioned, and all the others. And then lately, we've been working on these phenolics. And one of the largest ones is this one here, which is elagitannins from pomegranate. This is a pomegranate. It's a traditional food in the Middle East. It was the original apple in the Garden of Eden. Is in the Temple of Solomon. It's on the coat of arms of the Royal College of Physicians. You can pick a pomegranate and leave it for 6 months, then open it up, and those little seeds called the arils will still be okay without refrigeration. You can't say that for any other fruit. And the reason is that the peel of the pomegranate has these amazing elagitannins. This is the largest antioxidant known in any fruit or vegetable. And this pomegranate is a unique member of its family. There are only 2 members of the family. One is the pomegranate, and the other one is a species that only grows on an island off of Yemen. And there's about 1,100 varieties of pomegranate in the world, from white to red to orange to deep red. The one that is eaten traditionally in Iran, in the Middle East, and here grown in California is the wonderful variety of pomegranate. And it contains this punicolagen in the peel. I call it a hand grenade of ellagic acid. And ellagic acid is what you find in raspberries and strawberries. And we've done studies to show this goes up using our various facilities, goes up in the blood for about 6 hours after a single glass of pomegranate juice. When I got Alan Pantuck, a pilot study on this a few years ago, all the urologists were laughing, this will never work, glass of pomegranate juice every day, what's going on? We gave it to men who had had surgery or radiation and then had a rising PSA after their primary therapy to see what would happen. And, before we did that, we gave it to animals. We showed it inhibited the growth of prostate cancer in animals. We showed it inhibited in castrate animals, so both early and advanced prostate cancer. We showed that it targeted that NF-kappa B molecule that I talked about. And we showed that it reduced the rate of rise of PSA by 50% in humans. And I'm pretty sure I had that slide here. There it is. So I always like to say about this slide, failure is an orphan, but success has many fathers. So you'll see everybody on this paper and his uncle, including our Nobel Prize winner, Lou Ignarro at UCLA, is a member of this particular paper. But what it was very important is that we now have followed these men for 5 years, and it's been a durable result. The PSA reduction rate of rise of this has occurred. And we assume that prostate cancer is a ongoing multi-step process of carcinogenesis, just like colon and breast, and that those same benefits go back to the early stages via inhibiting inflammation because we've shown it inhibits NF-kappa B. We haven't proven that because it's very hard to do that. The SELECT trial on selenium and vitamin E had to recruit 49,000 men, and they basically did it because they had the clinics ready from the finasteride trial. But selenium and vitamin E doesn't equal good nutrition. If you're having selenium, vitamin E, hot dogs, and pizza, and all this other stuff, it's not going to prevent prostate cancer. So I think that was not a surprising result. We're continuing to do mechanism studies. We've got a couple of other studies ongoing. And while we're doing all this chemistry, I also want to get the idea, how do you apply this to your daily life? And it's very simple. You use your eyes. Only humans and birds have color vision. Look at your plate. Make it colorful. I've got this chart of all the different colors. Get 7 to 9 servings a day of fruits and vegetables. And guess what? You'll get an extra benefit. The typical vegetable 50 calories. The typical fruit, 70 calories. You get the 9 servings a day, you're right around 500 or 600 calories. Now add in the protein you need for your muscle mass, and you're going to be at a perfect weight. Have no more than 2 to 3 carbohydrates a day. I like them to be the high fiber breads that are really good. So in 1997, it's now 12 years ago, I made my own pyramid at UCLA, which guaranteed I would never be appointed to the USDA Dietary Guidelines Committee. I am their worst nightmare. They think I'm too strong on fruits and vegetables for some reason. So what's at the base of this USDA pyramid? It's basically grains, refined grains, because they're subsidizing their production and giving you the advice at the same time. And the new pyramid, which doesn't look like this, is exactly what the food industry wanted in 1992, and that was little panels coming up and down the pyramid so that all the fruits and vegetables, all the foods groups are created equal. They argued about the size of the icon. It cost $850,000 government dollars to build that pyramid. Originally it was upside down, then they turned it right side up, and then they put these little dots on there that kind of percolate through the food supply. That's sugar and fat that's been added into your food. That's actually what that is. And then sweets and fats and oils at the top, eat sparingly. Well, this really ground down on these guys. They couldn't dig it at all. You know, what do you mean eat sparingly? I mean the food at the bottom is better than the food at the top, so now they got their panels, and they're very happy, and it takes a computer to figure the damn thing out. The California pyramid, very simple. Now it takes a lot. Now a lot of people think they can exercise their way out of this. That's not true. It takes a lot of exercise. 1 bag of potato chips, you got to run 3 miles in 30 minutes to burn off the calories. 2 diet sodas, bicycle 8 miles in 30 minutes. So exercise is great. I'm a big proponent of exercise, but you got to do both. All the exercise books say go out and eat steak. That doesn't work. So here's your anti-inflammatory nutrition program. I'm going to finish on this. Balance your energy by exercising more and eating less. Increase your omega-3 fatty acids with ocean fish or fish oils. Increase your anti-inflammatory phytochemicals with fruits, vegetables, tree nuts, grains, and spices, and get 9 servings a day of fruits and veggies. And it's all laid out in what colors your diet. Increase your cruciferous vegetables, broccoli and mustard and spices. Increase your fiber intake. And then on botanical dietary supplements, I didn't talk about it all today. It's a very controversial subject. I had 37 lawsuits against me, which have now been dismissed. But much more research is needed. And Chinese red yeast rice, we wrote the first paper on that. And it is illegal in the United States. The one you get in the grocery store today is a supplement. We don't know how much Chinese red yeast rice is in there. It is the active ingredient in the statins, but it's illegal. You can buy it in any other country in the world except the United States. And we do studies on that in prostate cancer. We can still study it, but you can't buy it in the store. So here's my research team. I want to recognize them. We have a translational research unit, Dr. Xiaoping Li, and people worked for me for 20 years. I have a real high-performance team. We have chemists and nutritional scientists, cellular molecular biologists, and an international and national group of collaborators. And we've had wonderful research support from the Prostate Cancer Foundation, Michael Milken, Lyndon Stewart Resnick, S. Daniel Abraham, founder of SlimFast, and prior support from the National Cancer Institute for 22 years as one of 2 centers in the U.S. and the Department of Defense research funding for prostate cancer. Thank you all very much for your attention.
There you have it. A tremendous amount of information, just cram. And I suppose what I get out of this are really balances of activities and nutrition, balance, fruit, vegetables, the right sort of protein, and the right sort of oil. And what he mentioned right at the very end was Chinese red yeast rice. It is the principal component of lovastatin, and yes, you can get it. However, it does have a contaminant, a toxin in it whenever it is produced, and that has to be removed. So you need to get a red yeast rice from the States. You can't get it here, and you have to be very selective in who you get it from. I've got the names of a couple on my computer that I can recommend to you. Are there any questions? 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 I think you did a pretty good job. Okay, thanks, Karen.
And I was going to go home and have a bag of potato chips, but I'm feeling really guilty about this.